Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. So this week we're going to be talking about the infamous term F3. You probably hear doctors talking about it. F3, some even going to do F4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What does it mean? I know a lot of doctors are about to graduate from foundation training year 2. So this week, me and Ams, we're going to talk about the life of an F3. If you don't know us already, my name's Abdul. I'm joined with Ams. We're both junior doctors in London. We co-host the Scrubbed In podcast and the co-founders of Peerr. So, Ams, do you want to explain what it means to be an F3 doctor?
All right, so let's take a little bit back. Let's go a little bit back and let's go through the treadmill that everyone's on. It's medical school. You might do an intercalated degree, a master's, a PhD even, and then you end medical school and you go into foundation training. FY1, you've got a provisional license. That means you're not essentially a fully registered doctor. By the end of F2, you are a fully registered doctor that can work in NHS hospitals across the country. Essentially, you can't do private work still. You need a body that you're working for. Now, an F3 doctor is when you actually start to step off of that treadmill. So usually after F2, if you go into medicine, you'll go towards doing IMT, and then you become a registrar, a specialist trainee in some sort of particular specialty pathway, and then you become a consultant in whatever. If you're a surgeon, you'd go and do core surgical training, or you'd enter a run-through program, which basically incorporates core surgical training and your specialty training and take you all the way through, and at the other end, you become a consultant. An F3 year is basically saying, I'm going to take a break and I'm just going to work in a non-training job, or I might not work at all. I might just go traveling. So that's what people mean when they say, I'm going to take an F3. Essentially saying, I'm going to step off of the treadmill and do what I want. Basically, a lot of medics crave that. I think throughout medical school, the intercalated years, F1, F2, it's a natural point where you can just step away and take a breather. I think people crave that. And I don't know the exact stat, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments below, but I think it was something like 2 in 10 carry on from F2 into a specialty training, and the rest take a break.
I think, 70-80% they take a year out or they take a break. Yeah, so
it's a huge number, and it just shows the need for everyone to take a break and do other things. Now, the question people will ask at this stage is, and if you're watching, you're probably asking this as well, it's, so what can you do in an F3 year? So let's go through that. I think that's a great starting point for us. So yeah, I'll let you sort of pick up the first point.
Fine. So it's good you've explained what it means to do an F3. So like Ams mentioned, or like you said, it's taking a break from the career treadmill.
From the training program.
So when you are an F3 year, you are out of training officially. So many people take F3 for a variety of reasons. The most common reason is to locum. And what it means to locum in easy words, which we've kind of come across, is it's basically when you're a freelance doctor. So when you're an F3, you can freelance as a doctor. And what that means is you can pick shifts in pretty much any hospital, in any department, as long as you're qualified and have the relevant experience, and start working. Some people do a rota, some people work 1 day a week, some people work every day a week, some people do nights, some people do weekends. So it's the first time in the medical career after graduating from med school when you can have ownership and flexibility of your work rota and the days you work. In addition to having the flexibility, you have increased earning potential. So the hourly rate, what an F1, F2 doctor earns, as a locum, you can earn easily 2, 3, 4 times that salary, right? Absolutely. So the main reason why a lot of people take a 3 year is they want a locum to earn a lot of money in a shorter space of time. They want to have more control over their lives and do what they want to do in terms of traveling, want to work on their startups, want to work on projects. Some people do it for a break. So we were the cohort that finished in the middle of COVID. So I was on ITU for 8 months and I needed that break because I was just exhausted and mentally and physically drained. So that came at a right time. So the most common reason is locuming, right? What are other reasons people take an F3?
So just on the point of locuming before we move on. So when you're a locum, the other important thing is people actually do it to also get on the property ladder. So I actually recently properly learned about this. So obviously the banks lend you 4.5 times your salary. The training salary isn't so great. So to buy an expensive property in London, near impossible. Whilst on a locum shift, say you pick up 10 shifts in a month or something like that. No, actually, that wouldn't make sense. Sorry, you'd have to do, say you pick up 7 shifts a week. Say you're literally working flat out for a month, 2 months, 3 months, right? The banks would lend you a significant amount more than if you were to be in a training, because it looks like you're earning tons of money, right? You might be working every single day and you're working at a premium rate. Remember, the locum rate is actually market rate, right? So it can vary anything between 30, some places lower, 28, but out of London in some places it can go as high as for an SHO up to 80 quid an hour even sometimes.
So let's give the price range. So depending on where you are, you can earn from £25 an hour, let's say, plus minus, up until 75 to 80 pounds an hour, depending on how location, how desperate the department or the hospital is, how importantly or urgently they need the staff. So there's no point talking about specific numbers because it varies immensely.
You'd have to do your research for that. So that can be anything really. But yeah, as you said, it's to earn a lot of money in a short span of time and to leverage that. Usually people try and jump onto the property ladder. But money isn't the main thing why people actually take a year away. One of the most important reasons for why medics step away from the training treadmill after F2 is just to be exposed to things that you've never been exposed to, because you want to see if you like it. Because remember, after F2, if you commit to a training pathway, it's a pretty long road you're going to jump onto, right? So during that period, I know people who have taken on board fellowships as renal SHOs, surgical SHOs, doing different jobs. Maybe they never got a surgical job, so what they did was they went and got a job as a surgical SHO at whatever unit, if they're interested in transplant surgery, a transplant unit, right? So they got experience, so to see if they want to do that specialty in the long run. The other thing they do it for is portfolio development. So we've got friends who are budding neurosurgeons, right? They might have not got in after F2. So what do you do at that point? At that point, you technically become an F3, because now you don't have a training job. You've not got a training number. You're not in IMT, CST. You're technically an F3. You're out of training. But what you can do is use that opportunity to build your portfolio. So we've got our friends who are in fellowships, and the reason they're in fellowships and not a locum post, and they've chosen to go for a contract, is for the opportunities that come with it, be it teaching, working with a medical school, lecturing, anatomy demonstrating, and being in theatre. I think a lot of budding surgeons, they often take time out of training to bulk up their portfolio. Another reason is exams. A lot of people want to smash out their MRCP and MRCS, right? They just want to dedicate some time to it, smash it out, get back into the program. So there's some reasons for why people step off of the training treadmill. Anything else come to your mind?
So I think you've covered the main reasons as to why people do an F3 year. People want to take a break from the career treadmill. They want to locum, increase their earning potential to buy a house, to, travel the world, do whatever they want to do. The third reason is people don't get into the training program of their choice. So they have no choice but to accept a different program or take a year out F3 and bulk up their CV, bulk up their portfolio, get more expensive, reapply next year and get an even more competitive post. Or they do it for exposure to different rotations that they may have wanted to do. So example maybe
a different thing is also exposure to different countries. I've got friends who've Bilal went all the way to Australia. He's in Australia. He's loving life there. He exposed himself to a different healthcare system, a different rota, the same specialty though. He knew he wanted to do ENT. So he went over there, saw what it's like, fell in love with it, and I think he's working there as a registrar now. So he's loving life over there.
That's the main one. So a lot of people take this year to go abroad and taste it and see if they want to stay there, see what how the water was on the other end. So that's one. And the other thing which I was saying was exposure. So there may have been certain rotations you wanted in F1 and F2. You may not have necessarily got it, but now is an opportunity to go and explore that thing. And I think the key thing and the beauty about it, and it's one of the reasons why I love medicine, especially in this country, is this is such a natural career break. And we'll talk about if it's recommended to take an F3, and I have two thoughts on that. But it's proving to be even more popular as we go on. So I don't know if it's because of the COVID pandemic where people are a bit more tired and exhausted, they all opted to take it. But the key thing to understand is doctors now, or the new cohort of doctors, are more likely to take an F3 or F4 year, which is basically another year, compared to doctors 10, 15 years ago, where it wasn't very common to take year out or stop basically your training.
It's because, so first of all, you're not penalised for it, really and truly, right? You can always do beneficial work in that year out. Like I said, so surgeons are bulking up their logbook, people are getting research and presentations and conferences under their belt, they're earning more money, be it. So it's not penalised. I think maybe it was penalised back in the day. You looked like someone who was not
From what I
in
heard,
it.
So I had during F2 I did an ICU rotation. I spoke to the consultants then, and when you come towards the end of the rotation, like, what's everyone else doing? What are you guys doing? Some people we're going to New Zealand, some people are going to Australia. I said, I'm going back to London. I'm going to take a year out to Locum and travel. And, hopefully, because of the COVID, I thought it would ease, but it obviously didn't. And they were saying what's funny was when they were junior doctors, they would never have dared to take a year out of F3 because it shows a lack of dedication. It shows a lack of passion. It shows that you're not on it, especially for careers in ITU, in surgery. So now it seems to be the norm. And the other thing we forgot to mention is a lot of people use this opportunity or this career break to go and explore internships, startups, side hustles, and corporate work, right? So there are many reasons why people do it.
Exactly. So as you said, it's not looked down upon anymore. The culture's changed. It's accepted now. It's an opportunity. I think the millennial generation, they choose the scenic route. And if you're not being penalised for it, why not? The question is, why not? And a lot of consultants have told us the same. They've said, look, being a consultant is absolutely great, but don't rush to get here. There's nothing to rush here for, to give up all of your youth. Think about it. Some of your prime years of life are in your 20s. And if you get on that treadmill, you have your head in the books constantly, you're going to lose a lot of life years that are pretty crucial to some people. The other thing I wanted to talk about a little bit today was, I remember when I was talking about going into an F3 year, it's a bit anxiety inducing as well, because technically you're unemployed from point of July 31st or whatever it is. When your contract ends as an F2, you are unemployed. So if you don't have a training program, if you don't have a fellowship post lined up straight away, if you don't have a contract basically where you've signed on the dotted line to say that you've got a job, a rota for 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, whatever, you are technically unemployed. Right? You are technically unemployed. And that's anxiety inducing. And I think that's when you're truly a locum, because a locum is someone who's a freelance, and a freelance is someone who's got no contract and they're picking up gigs as they come and go, basically. So picking up a locum, let's talk about the two methods that there are. So you can be a bank locum, essentially, picking up singular shifts, or you can pick up bulks of shifts, which are basically like short, very, very short-term contracts, like a 2-week contract, 3-4 week contract.
So let's talk about the difference. So, which is quite good. So, you're a bank locum doctor, whereas I'm an agency locum doctor. So, how does your locum shifts work, and how do you pick them up? So, what's the difference essentially between a bank and an agency?
So, I guess the difference is an email goes out to a mass number of people. I don't know how many people are on that email list. It might be 1,000, it might be 10,000, it might be 1 million, I don't know, right? And then you literally look at the calendar so they essentially send out rota gaps or where they need SHOs or whatever. and you basically say, can I have that date? Doesn't mean you'll get it, by the way. It's a request. And then if there's no one else that wants it, they'll give it to you. If there's loads of people that want it, they find a fair way of delegation of the roles, basically, allocation. So that's how it works. And it could be that some months there's no shifts going out. It could be some weeks there are no shifts. It could be some weeks there's only a Sunday, there's only a Saturday. That's anxiety inducing, because that means you have to be comfortable with knowing that you might have no income for 1 week, but you might have a lot of income for the next week. And it's about, can your nerves handle, you know how they say about diamond hands in investment? Can you handle taking an average? I.e., I might not have something then, I might not have something then, but I'll have a lot then, but over the month it'll average, over the year it'll average this, should be okay.
So that's my situation. So as a bank locum doctor, you are directly liaising with the hospital itself.
It's more of a, with the hospital, with the trust. It's cross-trust.
So
the banks are cross-trust.
Decision maker, right? Whereas with an agency, so I'm agency locum doctor, so I'm part of an agency, and what they do is they find shifts in different hospitals and different departments, and they offer me these shifts. Say, do you want to work here? Do you want to work here? X, Y, Z. Or I might say I want to work on particular days, and they go out and get those shifts for me. So there's different ways of locuming, bank, agency. We'll probably spend another video talking about it. But long story short is, bank doctors tend to be doctors who have worked in that hospital during their foundation training, so they already have an existing relationship and rapport. Whereas agency doctors tend to be doctors that are working in a hospital they never trained at or had any sort of placements in, and you getting someone to basically hook you up. You can obviously join the bank, and it has different rates, different responsibilities. There's a lot of pros and cons, but we can talk about that later.
I think the difference is obviously you were outside of London.
Yeah, so it was easier for me. So that feeling of anxiety of, I'm going to have to go back to London. I want to go back to London, but there's no job lined up for me. So if you, let's say for you, right, you were in London, you got to work in the same hospital, so it wasn't a big move, right? You just transitioned from a trainee to a bank doctor, right? For me, I had to get in touch with an agency or get in touch with a bank and try to secure that job. And then this is a big tip for anyone that is planning to join a locum agency or any bank. Start the process before you even finish foundation training too, because there are a lot of documents you need to do. Stuff like your immunization history, your certificate, your CV, etc. So start the process before, because you want to lock down these shifts and jobs before you transition over. Because what will happen is the shifts may be gone, or they might not be up to this level you want to do it at. And for me, I didn't have any work during August. I started work in September, and like you mentioned, even now my work varies. Some weeks I'm doing a few days, some weeks I'm doing less, some weeks I'm doing more. But I'm comfortable with it because it works for what we're doing in our F3 year, which is what we'll talk about in a moment.
But not for everyone. So I've had discussions with other people saying, why are you signing a contract for 6 months when you don't even want to do this? I know you don't want to do it as a long-term thing. And their simple response was, I can't handle the fact that I don't know if I'm not going to have a job in 3 months' time. I need 6 months stability minimum. So again, that's the anxiety-inducing part. But if you're okay with it, if you've got a bit of the diamond hands, they say, it's usually okay with it.
I think you can make it work. So long story short, the beauty about it all is very flexible. You can do it in lots of different ways. You can make it work for you. It's the first time in your medical career where things are on your own terms.
So let's talk about a few of the drawbacks of being off of the training program, okay? So being on an F3, and if you stay out, F4, F5, you don't need to say F, you're just out of training. I don't know where it caught on this whole F.
From the F1, F2, F3, F4, it's just, people say it's easy to identify.
I guess the reason is though, the reason why it caught on is because there is no career progression. The reason why that F, we colloquially keep on saying, oh, I'm on an F4, I'm on an F5, I'm on an F7, I'm just out of training now, is because you stay at the level you exit at. So
that's the biggest,
So if you exit after F2, you are an SHO and you stay at that level. It doesn't matter if you've worked 15 years out of training as an, as a locum SHO, you are an SHO. You are never going to be a registrar unless you have different competencies signed off, I guess. But if you say go back into the training pathway and then you exit at ST3, ST4, ST5, ST6, you can locum as a registrar and you stay forever as a registrar. Again, unless you find some way of doing some sort of competencies and then can go for consultancy somehow through, let's say, Caesar pathway. But that's a different story altogether. So when you are a locum, when you are out of training, there is no career progression. You stay at the level you're at, and that's important to know. You don't become a reg somehow magically, unless you somehow prove your competencies to the place you work at. So that's number one. What other things would you say?
So obviously, that's the biggest drawback, is you're officially left training. You are a career halt. The second thing is with locum, you only get paid when you work. So let's say in the unfortunate situation where you do become unwell, where you do become sick or some sort of emergency happens, if you're not working, you're not getting paid. It's simple as that.
So when I got COVID, it was a rough moment, because financially it was a rough moment, because suddenly zero pay. And zero pay for, we're not talking about a week, we're talking 3 weeks I was out of action for. That meant 3 weeks of pay. That's only nearly a month of income that I just went down the drain. And when you work in London, if you're living in London, the rent living in London, the food, the living costs of London is quite high. So I guess that can be a difficult moment if you're not in work, if you're sick, you don't get paid, including holidays, by the way.
Yes, there is no holidays. So it's basically, when you become a locum doctor, when you go into F3-4, whatever you want to call it, you forfeit the benefits you have or your employer gives you, which is holiday pay, sick pay, support, issues with tax, payroll, HR. So all of that stuff is forfeited and you are responsible for it, which also means that the career aspects are also upon you now. And what I mean about that is appraisals and reviews. You are now responsible for your appraisal. You need to privately pay someone, or your hospital may sort you out, or your agency may sort you out, but you don't have a supervisor anymore. You don't have someone you can go to for help or any sort of issues. You don't have someone looking out for you. You are basically out there to fend for yourself in a weird way.
It's a little bit different for me, but I think I'm at a very pretty amazing trust though. So I've managed to secure a supervisor looking after me. Basically every year will sit with me and look at my progression and will support me and help me put down targets. And then the appraisal, my bank will sort me out, but that's because I offer them a large volume of hours. So if I only work there 1 day a week, I don't think they'd do it. But because I'm giving them that service they need as well, in the sense that I'm doing a lot of hours for them, then they also have helped me out on that aspect. So that's pretty incredible. But yes, you're right. On the whole, you're responsible for ensuring you're appraised. Before we go on though, they're probably sitting here thinking, what is an appraisal? So let's just go through that.
So the appraisal is similar to F1, F2, where you have your ARCP, where you have your portfolio, where you log your case studies, your DOPS, the procedures, your teaching. The appraisal is the same thing. And as part of the GMC regulation, these things change, but they expect you to be appraised every year, which in essence is to show that you're still up to date with your learning, still up to date with your clinical competencies, you're still saying case studies, and there are a bunch of online portfolios that let you do this. But this time around, you have to take ownership, you have to be proactive, you have to start populating these portfolios with the cases you saw, with the teaching you've done, with the audits you've done. But an appraisal is essentially what you've done in F1 and F2, and it's a review.
So in a nutshell, it's just important that you have one of these done every year, just to show that you're keeping up to date, you're engaged in your medical career, you're looking after yourself, you're moving forwards essentially. I think it's a way that the system also ensures that you're not just vanishing, and it's also make sure a certain quality is maintained, right?
Because despite you being out of program, you are still dealing with patients, you are still working with real scenarios, real life cases, and you may also go back into training. So it's a good way of staying on top of your skills, staying on top of your knowledge, and allowing, like you said, a standard of competency. No, 100%. So there's so many different things you can talk about locum, F1, F2, F3, this whole forever being an F, whatever you want to call it. So let's give some practical examples from our experience of how we did our F3 year and kind of show the potential what you can do with it. So how would you describe our F3 year? So our F3 year is, I don't know if it's a unique one or maybe it is a common one. It's basically, we took a break from the career treadmill. We knew early on that we weren't going to be working a lot during this F3 year or whenever we're out of training. And the reason for that was basically to grow the podcast, to work on Scrubbed In, to kind of work on other things outside of medicine. Because Peerr wasn't there at the time. So for transparency's sake, we are F4 now. So we're not F3. We did F3. This is our F4. So we've taken 2 years out of training. Yeah, obviously we've continued working. So talk about that F3, F4 year, how we did it, what we did actually. So it might be a bit...
So F3, so we split it up, didn't we? So with the way I did it was I split up into how many shifts I need to work. So I need to work between 2 to 3 days a week, I'd say. So we split it up into that, and the rest of the time we essentially worked on unearthing passions and interests. That's it in a nutshell. Whether it was podcasting, at the time we had Medigate, we were working with different projects, working in the charity sector, trying to start the YouTube channel and stuff like that. So I think we used the F3 year to unearth passions and to start working in different avenues. But if you go back to the points that we just made about why you use an F3 year, we used it to expose ourselves to different things that we potentially might like. Yeah. And there was a bite.
So the question is why did you not do that while in training? Why did you take a year out to do that stuff? Because we didn't do it necessarily for the money. We didn't necessarily do it to bulk up our CV, because I think by that time we decided we were not going to pursue surgery anymore, right? So why not do it while training?
It was just unfeasible to the mission and the dream that you have, right? In the sense that if you're working, or even on a contract, we didn't take a contract for 12 months on a rota, right? And the whole reason is you need to have the freedom of time to be able to allocate it how you want. Right? The only reason Peerr has come about, the only reason Scrubbed In has grown the way it's grown is because we doubled down on it. We grew it in different angles, in different ways. We experimented. We've seen what works. It would have taken probably another 5 years to work out what Peerr should look like. But we managed to accelerate all of that by just simply doubling down on that. Yeah. Right? And the other thing is we started Scrubbed In alongside F1, and it was difficult. We're coming to record episodes 1 a.m., 2 a.m. at night after on-call shifts and stuff. That is not... It's not possible to keep that going.
It's not sustainable. It's not healthy, if you're honest.
Not sustainable. So the number one reason why we did that, we didn't do it for the money, because if we did it for the money, I would have worked flat out in several different hospitals earning at maximum rate. It's because of wanting to work on these passion projects. And then the crucial thing was, though, in the F3 year, there was a bite early on. Scrubbed In took a bite straight away. And then suddenly from that, the Peerr platform came out of nowhere. So we might have only launched in November, right, 2021. But the idea itself was born ages before that. And we got to work on that. Yeah. And again, startups are no joke, right? It's not just an idea and suddenly you have this platform. Just look at the back end of a product, the technological requirements of it, the customer service, the branding, the marketing, even thinking up the logo. How long does that take?
So I think I was speaking to someone that got in touch with me that wants to set up their own little startup. And when I said to them that from idea conception to what you call taking to market or launching it, when we thought of Peerr to the day we launched it, it was nearly 9-10 months. Right? So for 9-10 months, no one knew Peerr existed. We were working on it. We were doing kind of market testing, user feedback, designing, building, right? So 9-10 months in an F3 year is very long time. That's most of F3.
That's F3 done.
It was pretty much done. Yeah. And I think the advantage and the thing we're grateful for, and this is privilege, really, really, really privilege, was we'd managed to do F1, F2, get some sort of clinical experience under our belt, still locum a few days a week to earn enough to kind of pay the bills, survive, keep a roof over our head, and double down, like Am said, on Peerr. And for us, it's an opportunity cost. And we had a debate, argument actually, with a few of my friends, where it's like, do you not think it's better in a safety net to do GP training and be fully qualified and work on pay afterwards? And then it's an opportunity cost. So if you are there in this position where you have a startup idea or you think you're going to work on it and it's time sensitive, meaning you need to do it now, otherwise this idea maybe be too late and someone else might beat you to it, then definitely take an F3 year to pursue it. Saying that before I forget is, so the advice I give, and this is more for GP trainees, right? So a lot of GP trainees have finished F2, they want to do GP training, and their goal is to locum afterwards as a GP to earn even more money as you would get as an SHO, right? And I say, if you feel like you need a break, if you want to take time to travel, especially after COVID, then take the year out, do an F3, apply for GP training. Or if you have a project, something you want to work on, something you want to give time and effort to, do an F3. However, if you're not interested in this stuff, which is perfectly fine and happens all the time, where you don't care about side passion, side project, you just want to get through the career ladder as soon as possible, then I would say don't worry too much about taking an F3 year. Do GP training because it's only 3 years, and then take a career break and do what you want to do. So that's the caveat advice I do give, because probably people might be seeing this and saying, you know, he's giving me something different advice to what he's saying on here. So I don't know what your thoughts are on that, if you agree with that, or if you still recommend taking a 3 year out.
I personally just, there is no right answer to it. It's circumstantial, right? Because if you think about it, again, you taking an F3 is dependent on your mental health as well. Yeah. After F1, F2, after this COVID pandemic, right? It doesn't matter if GP training is 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 15 years, right? Sometimes you just need a break. Yeah. So, and it's okay. 12 months is not long. It flashed by for us, right? So I think it's circumstantial. I think it's dependent on what you got going on around you. Taking a break, it's not a long break. 12 months is not a long break. And to be honest, GP training, you still have to do the hospital year as well. Yeah. So it is tough still. So sometimes you need the break. So I think if you need a break, you need a break. Yeah. It's just the opportunity cost is obviously at the end of GP training, you're earning significantly more than your year out. But it depends. The other thing that's really important to know is just on the startup front of things, right? So for the people that are asking, why can't we do a startup alongside training, especially alongside the longer years of training? So we're talking be it medicine or surgery, right? So startups require a lot of time. Me and you know that. Whether it's the development of a feature, a platform, a back end, recruiting, marketing, branding, whatever it is, right? Now, if there's two people, let's say, who've come up with two identical companies, one is being run by someone who's on it 24/7 and the other can only allocate 5 hours a week, who's winning?
The one that's working on it more, of course.
Hands down, because he's on it 24/7. So when you said to me, why don't I do this alongside GP training? Why don't I do it alongside surgical training or whatever it is because it's not feasible to the scale at which we envision Peerr. If Peerr was just a passion project on the side for no reason, fine. If I'm here sitting and telling you I'm trying to put education to the hands of everyone, that is not a goal that's going to be achieved by putting 2 hours a week on it. Right?
But funny enough, we're recording this midweek on a Wednesday. It's 7 o'clock now, but we started recording at like 2 o'clock on a Wednesday. Yeah, that's midweek. You cannot do this on a normal rota. Exactly. I have a meeting tomorrow at 3 o'clock with a guy from America. You got meetings later on today. So the flexibility as well. It's not about the time, right? So let's say devil's advocate, fine. If you're smart with your hours, you can achieve what someone achieves in 8 hours in 4 hours, right? If you're smart with it, right? But the flexibility is gone. Yeah, exactly. The vast majority of people, they work during 9 to 5. Your accountants, your lawyers, X, Y, and Z, right? They're not going to entertain meetings after that time because they got their own lives to do, right? Exactly. So if you're busy at work, who's having those meetings? How do you progress? So it's the flexibility I think that gives you might be even more important than the time you have to spend on it. Of course, time does help.
Exactly. Like say an investor says, I've only got time between 1 to 2 p.m. and you have to meet...
Investor, he's not going to work after 6 o'clock.
He says, you have to meet me at this time or don't meet me. Yeah. If you're on shift, you're not doing that. Patient care is important, right? But if you've not got that responsibility, if you're out of shift, if you're not working and you're controlling your rota, I'm going to meet you there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think this is our experience of taking F3 year. I think we weren't forced to take it, but we had to take it to do what we need to do to fulfill our vision, our mission, and our aim in life.
It's not we had to take it. We want to take it. Yeah. I think if you said to me, would I go back and then do it any different? Would I work on Peerr alongside? Would I go back and do anything any different? No, I would do it. In fact, I'd see if I could take even more time out.
Yeah.
Right? So I think we want to do this. Well, I want to do this, and it's the safety net. It's why we said on the last week's video, the week before, on where we talked about finishing F2 to give you that privilege, that safety net of venturing out slowly until you completely go in.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think that's a good point. I think if you're going to take years out of training, do it after F2, where you are in a position where you can locum, where you can have a more flexible work-life balance, and you can earn enough to basically survive. And then do passion projects, startups, hustles, build your CV, go to theatres every day, do whatever you want. But yeah, I think it's something a lot of people are confused about. We were confused about ourselves. There's not much information out there. So if you want, comment below. We'll do like a proper series on how to actually start the locum life, how to sign up, what are the agencies, what are bank. But I think that's pretty much it as an introduction to what F3 is, because the term is thrown about a lot, but no one really knows what it means until you do it.
Exactly. Yeah. I think if you've got any questions about the F3, just comment down below and we'll try and get back to you. Any other remarks about the F3?
I think it's an opportunity that should be taken. It's a cheat code. It's a hack in the career ladder trajectory, especially medicine. So don't waste it. You utilize it. And I think there's a lot of things you can do with the F3 if you're smart and, like you mentioned, strategic. But yeah, it's definitely an interesting one.
Amazing. So yeah, I think we'll wrap up there. If you've watched this whole video and you've reached here, thank you so much. We'll see you in the next video next week.